well, the next few weeks, and I hope we're going to have some fun times with you. We're sitting around the fire. We're going to be chatting around about the last week of things, but I think there are first a few formalities that we have to go to. In all my fireside chats in the past, the first time we had someone together on a fireside chat, it was important to have a handshake.
Yes, good idea.
An official welcome.
Thank you, sir.
Since I guess I'm an Oman and you coming into the team. But it's amazing, Scott, how you've just slotted in. You just sort of arrived here and you know what to do.
Well, thanks very much, Mark. It's been made very easy by the team of people surrounding myself and Mark. There's been an incredible support team making us as presenters, making our lives very easy, and it's been great to getting to know everyone so far. So thank you, Mark. Thanks for the official welcome, and thanks for also setting this all up while myself and Brian were out there.
I'm only responsible for the fire. Jason's responsible for all the toys.
Okay, well, thank you, Jason and Mark, for the fire.
And we've got Brian on camera. Alex is in final control. I hope you're going to be sending some questions to us. We like to have questions. Questions at WildEarth.tv, or on Twitter, it's #SafariLive. So you were at advantage over me because you got here a little bit earlier than me. So you've actually enjoyed the whole breaking out of spring and almost the first bit of summer.
It is true, Mark. I've been very privileged to get you just 2 weeks ahead of you.
Oh, is that all?
Yeah, but
okay. So much happens in that.
Exactly. A lot has changed with the bush, even new migratory birds coming in, of which the European roller we both saw the first one of on the same day, which was interesting. So
I think my day of arrival.
Yeah, exactly. So the changes have been good, and I have enjoyed kind of finding my feet before you got here. So.
But that's another thing. You know, we always used to get asked a question about how long it takes to learn the roads, and I think having asked that question to many of us who have presented over the years, you probably get a very different answer, but it's surprising how quick you've kind of learned your way around.
I've been lucky. I've managed to spend a fair amount of time out on the roads, and thankfully all of the cameramen I've been with have also been very useful in helping me learn the roads. That, together with a bit of technology,
yeah.
We must be honest, there's an app that one of the employees of this area, he actually used to work for the Sabi Sands Reserve before developing this app, which helps anti-poaching teams and guides like myself and Mark in finding routes along or through these different conservancies. So he's mapped out all the different areas and all the roads and all their names. So we have a useful app that helps us.
I was blown away. I just touched on Arethusa the other day, and I opened that app on that machine, that tablet that we've got. We've got a tablet with this on, and I didn't know that it actually tracked your movement. And I was looking for Knobthorne Pan, and there was a blue dot at Knobthorne Pan, so I thought, well, the pans are marked with blue dots. And then I moved away from Knobthorne Pan, and lo and behold, Knobthorne Pan followed me. So yeah, I learned that the blue dot actually tells you where you are.
Yeah, that's us. The blue dot is us.
So that's such an amazing tool. I've always relied on hard copy of maps. Just a photostated piece of paper or a laminated map, and it's great learning that way. But sometimes you can't remember how many turns you've made, and you can't really remember your exact position on the map. So that is really a handy tool, and I think it's going to help us both in the next couple of weeks. I think you had your first sort of really good time on Arethusa today.
That's true. Certainly probably my most productive drive on Arethusa. And I've been mentioning to the guests that it's foreign land to both yourself and myself. Mark, having worked for WildEarth for many years now, has spent time on Djuma, so he knows this property, but now we've got access to more land, which is wonderful. It just increases our opportunities to show you different animals, and we both have a little bit of learning to do on the Arethusa property.
It's not only the learning, it's just discovering new ground. I mean, you've had that just coming to Djuma alone, but I appreciate that wonderful feeling of driving a road you've never driven before, and actually learning it and knowing that you're going to come back to it. Because it's one thing driving somewhere and you're trying to absorb as much as you can because you might not come that way again. But when you drive a road and there's so many things that you can look for, and you know you're going to have the opportunity to drive it again and again, and one day there's going to be a cat on that road, or there's going to be a sighting that marks that road in your memory, and that helps put this map picture in your head. I'm sure the sightings that you've had so far have helped you with learning the roads, and
100%.
you come around a bend and you know that was where I saw that, and it'll be like that forever. I can't imagine how.
Yeah, you must come around every corner with happy memories of sightings you've had.
I think
on
every
Jumo.
road. I think every road. Yeah, I can say yes. If not me, it was Peter or any of the other guys that were with us in the previous broadcast, because we used to alternate between camera work, directing back in Final Control, and presenting. So we got all around all three things. So we knew what was going on every drive. So even if we weren't on the vehicle, we were experiencing it. I think one of the most amazing experiences. Rex and Peter were on the vehicle, and Lishan was in Final Control. My room just happened to be the one right next to Final Control, and I heard this word brown hyena, and then I heard Peter shouting like a brown hyena, and I rushed into FC, and lo and behold, on screen, live, for the first time ever, was a brown hyena just coming in off of Gowrie Main.
You're joking?
Gosh, it was amazing.
Jeez, I wouldn't have thought.
Just had I think Rex was on camera and Peter was presenting, but that was a kind of thing that we want to get to experience anywhere we go, is seeing things for the first time and experiencing new areas. I think I'm going to get a question, because it's about time we heard from someone out there. Who is it?
So while Marc answers this question, or hears this question, I'll just let you know that Marc has got an earpiece in, which links him back to the Final Control. And I'll just rely on Marc to relay the questions to myself.
Oh, so you just scrambled my brain.
I thought I might have done that. There's nothing. It's difficult, folks, when the earpiece is going and somebody else is talking, so I'm going to keep quiet.
No, I just need to ignore what you're saying, because I know you're going to be picking up the slack. Anyways, I think it's Mary, and the most memorable or spiritual moment.
For you or for me, or for both of us?
Kim, sorry. St. Mary's Point. Oh, uplifting a spiritual moment in the bush. My most uplifting or spiritual moment. When you live with nature like we do, it's very, very hard to just to separate one moment from another, or one spiritual or uplifting moment, because that is what nature is. To me, is that every day, every moment, or there's the possibility every day and every moment to have such spiritual or uplifting experiences, and to put one above the other wouldn't really be fair to any of the others, because every time you see something, and you like at a sunset or an elephant, or you think it's the most amazing thing you've ever seen, and then another time you see something that it doesn't go beyond that. It's equally as spiritually satisfying or uplifting, but it's different, and because it's different, it can't be compared to any other. And I think maybe that's what it is that every moment you experience in nature is going to be different. You can never experience the same thing twice.
I couldn't agree with you more, Marc. It's so difficult to pinpoint any one special sighting, regardless of whether it's an emotional sighting or a spiritual kind of upliftment that you feel, or just sheer excitement. It's difficult to point out any one, but if I was to pick an animal that we do seem to be able to connect with, or perhaps understand emotionally, is the elephants, one of your favorites, I know, Marc, because there's something about the way they move and the way their body language is that you can almost see or understand how they may be feeling or behaving in a certain situation. So if I was to choose an animal that would,
I think so,
make those emotional kind of
I think it's them being so accepting of us. I think that's what it is that we can be in their presence even in times of stress, when, like the musk bull I was with earlier. When we have those moments when they choose to accept us in their presence, they neither ignore us nor do they try and break that connection, the physical bond, or rather the physical differences that we have. There's a barn owl calling. But it's their acceptance of us in their presence. I think that is the most humbling thing, is that there are times when elephants don't want us around, and they certainly show it.
Mm-hmm.
And the more times you spend with them, I think the more times you get to know that there's actually nothing more humbling and nothing more uplifting.
Then when they do let you into their space,
Yeah.
100%.
Even better on foot.
Yes, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. We've had some common experiences. I mean, you've been to East Africa as well.
Yes, and I mean, how strange that we both actually spent time working at the same camp, which had beautiful views overlooking Kilimanjaro to the south.
Amboseli. Did you get to Amboseli?
I sadly didn't.
Oh. I had to do a drive one day from the Chulu. We were both in a place called the Chulu Hills, which is sort of southern Kenya, southeastern Kenya. And as Scott says, it was overlooking, you could look from camp, it was up on an old caldera, I guess you could say, because it was all volcanic, and some of the most recent volcanic activity on the continent, in fact, with those lava flows. But the camp overlooked this valley, and then way to the south was this 20,000 foot peak. Took a while to see it though.
Yeah, and that's the funny thing, because we were both there at similar times of the year, and at this stage of the year, over kind of October, November, December, there were periods of 3 or 4 days with cloud cover where you couldn't even see Kilimanjaro, but when the clouds finally did clear,
that was uplifting and spiritually mesmerizing, I think.
Yeah.
I can remember looking at the horizon when there was cloud and trying to imagine where the peak of Kilimanjaro would be, and I could only imagine the escarpment of the Drakensberg, which is about a 10th of the height of Kilimanjaro. So I tried to extrapolate and think, oh well, it might be there. But when I actually saw it, it was looking a lot higher up in the sky, from, what was it, 120 kilometers away or more.
Yeah.
And your week this week, I mean, you've been drives before, but I think we had a great start.
We have, and it's been great spending time with you, and
you go ahead.
And hearing your old tales of this area and knowledge from this area, not just your knowledge as a guide, but specifically your knowledge of Djuma. The few drives that we got to spend together were really great, and it took only a few days before or after Marc had told me some of his secrets or tales of this area that Quarantine Mail was heading straight towards an area that you said we could expect to find him. So it's all that kind of information that's so nice to be able to share with other guys.
I would have been lost. Also, I think it was even Peter Pretorius who, before I started doing a couple of drives, there were a few places that he took me to, or it was when I was on camera with him, and we happened to be in a place where there were leopard or something, and he would say, well, there's this little road that will take you down into this drainage line, or there's a little track that goes to that. I was just trying to sort of, I guess it's going to be a tradition that you pass those little secrets, those little tidbits on.
Yeah.
Because funnily enough, they're not real roads, they're little tracks, and they're not meant to be driven much of the time, but somehow, because Karula is very, I suppose she's a cat and she has favorite places, and she's always taken her cubs to certain places, and so there've always been these little nooks and crannies out in the blue where we've found our way to them, like old hyena dens and certain little mud pans between certain roads, where you can't really go there unless you know there's a cat there, and every now and then there is. And it's nice knowing those little backtracks, I suppose we could call them.
Yeah, it's sometimes essential information. If you didn't know about some of these little tracks, you could wave that sighting goodbye.
But you could be trying to beat your way through a bush 5 feet away from it, and you wouldn't even know it was there.
Exactly.
Anyways, we've got a question coming in, because we really do like questions. The whole thing about being able to answer your questions and talk to you live. So, Hawaii. Why did you become a guide? MJ, this is MJ, by the way. MJ's in Hawaii. I know that because I know MJ from years ago.
Okay, well, good evening, MJ, all the way from Hawaii. Welcome to the campfire. There's no individual reason why I became a guide. I don't know if it's the same for you. It's kind of a combination of factors from growing up. But I was privileged to get born in South Africa as a starting point, because we are spoilt with incredible wilderness areas. And then my parents also allowed me to experience and explore wilderness areas with them growing up, various national parks, the Kruger National Park, just here on our doorstep, being one of them.
Mm-hmm.
So by growing up spending time in wild places, I slowly fell in love with them, or actually I think quite quickly fell in love with wild places and insects and animals, and anything that moved and was outdoors I fell in love with. And from that young age, it was kind of always a dream to become a field guide. And through various different forks in the road throughout my life, I managed to kind of try and keep the bush in mind for a goal as a workplace when I grow up. And thankfully, this is where I find myself a few years later. So right in the thick of things, just as I had hoped to be growing up. But a lot goes goes to my parents for what they shared with me and allowed me to experience growing up. And simply the fact of the matter was that we were born in this beautiful country. But
I think being exposed to it, because it's very similar with my life. My parents took us to Kruger, but I was, I think, even more lucky than being able to experience a private property on the edge of Kruger that in the old days was land that nobody really wanted because it was so deep in the bush and there was nothing you could do with it.
Yeah.
And my folks persevered with it, and nowadays it's deep within the actual greater part of Kruger. But yes, as a kid experiencing Kruger from standing on the back seat of my folks' car, on the Peugeot station wagon, and being allowed to play with the insects and collect snakes. And yes, I had a menagerie at home. I used to come home with all sorts of things. So for me, it was just a natural progression. Unfortunately, I didn't take an academic route, so I couldn't get into the scientific side of things. And it was the most logical. When you have a passion, you want to follow it, you find the path of least resistance, I suppose. And for me, that was the tourism industry and becoming a guide and being able to share over the years, just share what I love about it, everything that I know and everything that I still have to learn.
Yeah.
I think that's perhaps what makes this particular part of guiding. I suppose we're not really guides, we're presenters, but just being able to reach so many more people than just a dozen on a vehicle.
Yeah.
Questions coming in. We like questions. Changes our subjects. Nice piece of old marula tree.
It is a beautiful piece of marula tree.
Brenda. Oh, golly gosh. Brenda. Hello, Brenda. The most bizarre thing you've encountered? That requires thinking about. One of the most bizarre things that I found, there was an antlion that had an ant. I don't know if any of you know what an antlion is, but an antlion is the larva of an adult. As an adult, it looks kind of like a cross between a dragonfly and
a moth-ish.
I suppose some of them dragonfly and a moth, or dragonfly and a damselfly.
Yeah.
But anyways, they're wonderful insects. But as larvae, they burrow into the sand and they create a conical depression in the sand that forms like a pit. That when an ant or something falls into it, the sand is too steep for it to run up, and the more it tries to run up, the more the sand creates like a conveyor belt, and these two jaws come out of the sand and grab the ant, and there was this ant in the jaws of an antlion. And there were two other ants hovering around the edge, and they brought a dead ant, and they put the dead ant in the antlion hole and pulled the live ant out.
No ways.
I promise you, that was the most bizarre.
That's incredible.
That gave me insight into well, I'd already had insight, but it just they're not little machines that just run on pheromones and instinct and whatever they're born to. They're actually they can react to their environment, to different types of stimuli in different ways. Perhaps it was just a danger pheromone that was given off, and they don't know. Maybe it was just a bizarre thing that happened, but that was for me one of the bizarre things. What about you? Can you think of anything?
I can't think of anything to that degree of craziness. But what I would like to say is that it's such a good lesson for us to focus on the smaller things that are happening around us. Now, the scene that Marc has just described to you, he would have had to be on his hands and knees to be able to unfolding.
I think
so. That's watching this all unfold, because it's a very small animal, and it is important to take a closer look and sometimes get on your hands and knees and
I think there are a few
investigate.
viewers out there that could probably believe that without hesitation.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I hope to be getting on my hands and knees again because it's summertime and there are a lot of wonderful creatures out there. They're invariably going to be swarms of termites and well, all sorts of things. Hopefully we're going to see some reptiles. In terms of what we see and how we see it, it's very random. There are very few times that we can actually predict where something is. Things are moving. Things have to be in a different place every day. So it is all about going out and looking for animals and that excitement of when you're going to find it. I mean, today was an example for you.
Yeah, yeah.
I've got a question coming in.
Yeah, we started off having a quiet afternoon today, and we were on our way to the lion that we did end up showing you a few glimpses of, and then we bumped into a potential Karula sighting. There was a female leopard seen who was believed to be Karula, kind of on the path that we were taking towards the lion, and obviously got caught up in that for a few minutes. Sadly didn't manage to find her, but a good example of how you cannot plan as much as you like to try to.
And sometimes when you try too hard, you don't. And I mean, we experienced that, unfortunately, on the Big Cat Week. And we were desperate for cats, in a way, for that whole weekend. The weather was playing havoc.
Yeah.
Just before Peter and Hayden left us last weekend. And you and I spent hours out there. We were tracking cats all day. You spent a lot more time than me, I have to admit. I was trying to catch up on things.
But then, when you try too hard,
but then the next day, first thing in the morning, on Monday morning last week, there's a leopard on the damn wall, and our first 3 drives we had leopard, boom, boom, boom. So you can't push these things. And so I think what you did today is you take a slow drive and you enjoy whatever you can see, and maybe you'll get that little gift at the end, or at some point you'll get that little gift, that little pick me up that yes, there's something that's, but it doesn't have to be lion or leopard or anything.
It certainly doesn't.
Anyways, there's a question from Josh that came in, and he wants to know, has there ever been a time when you've been sort of hard pressed not to intervene, or maybe the question wasn't put that way, I'm paraphrasing, but has there ever been a time when you've wanted to, or where you have or could have intervened in something? And personally, there's always. I've even intervened. What about you? I mean, it's very hard.
Yeah, there's so many variables within this question that's been asked. If I find something in a completely natural ecosystem, which you don't get very often on the planets in this day and age, but the Kruger National Park, for example, and surroundings, which we are a part of here, is a place where, because it's so natural, the need for us to interfere becomes lessened or minimal from a purist point of view. So if you do see an injured animal, let's say an impala, for example, as sad as it is for that impala, if you intervene and help it, all you're necessarily doing is preventing a leopard who may be in an equally trying or tough situation trying to raise 2 cubs, for example.
Very much so.
And that leopard may need this lucky break, an injured impala, to feed herself and her cubs. So by intervening, you're upsetting the natural balance.
Yeah.
And later on down the line, you don't know what effect that is going to have. So that's from a purely purist point of view, to not intervene. But there are different stages depending on the animal and the scenario and where you may be found or what wilderness area you're in. That intervening may be something that can be done.
Yeah, it's hard. It's very hard. Having a passion for things and seeing something in distress is very difficult. There are many circumstances where your heart is telling you one thing, but the mind, the knowledge and the respect for nature is so great that you know you shouldn't. Just a couple of examples. I mean, there was one example where we had the European swallow, Eurasian, or what they're called now, the new name of the European swallow?
I've lost track.
Anyways, the swallow that comes out from Europe, from Germany, Holland, caught in a golden orb web just before it was due to go back. It was towards the end of summer when the golden orbs are very, very big, and it was probably had a wonderful summer in Africa, and there it was hanging upside down, exhausted in a golden orb's web. And I just couldn't bear it. The spider could eat insects. There were many insects. She was fat and she was going to be dying soon anyway.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mitigate the fact that I interfered, but it was just, here's a swallow that's got to go back to Europe soon. So I think, I can't remember when it was. Some viewers might really know, but because we had that on camera. I've pulled wildebeest calves out of the mud, which has probably been to their detriment. They probably would have been taken by a crocodile or something and would have ended a lot quicker, and maybe I prolonged it. But one has to learn. It's just as hard as it is, and we don't. It's not because we're cold or callous or we lack understanding. You have to know from the way we talk about life that we're very, very passionate about it, and it breaks our hearts sometimes to see things. But we know that we can't. We are merely voyeurs. To interfere would actually cause a whirlwind of other troubles, and we've had that often actually with injured animals even, where the question is, do you interfere? And then put it through all the stress of darting it, and then it's got to reintegrate into its surroundings, having been through that experience with humans, and how that's going to alter its life. Or even, in a lot of cases, sometimes the injury is so bad that the stress and the trauma of going through darting and rehabilitation is actually the very thing that kills it. Whereas if it survived in nature, or if it was left to its own healing, that very possible, it would have survived and it would have healed. I mean, things are so resilient. Things are so quick to heal or adapt to things. I've seen elephants with displaced hips or shoulders that have obviously been that way for a long time, and they limp, but they're not in that. They're not in agony. They're not in. Well, we don't know that. But there's very little that we as humans can do. If we have to think about the size of game reserves and national parks and wildlife areas all over the world, how many animals have to go through that trial and tribulation?
Yeah.
Questions?
A very good question, though. That and there's certainly no right or wrong, but I think what we need to understand is the less human intervention or contact in a wilderness area, the better, and that is across the board. So
my ears quiet.
That's something worth taking from this, I think, Mark. I don't know if you agree that.
I do.
Fundamentally, if we weren't on this planet, all of nature would be perfectly harmonious, which it's not now, and that's hugely contributed to what we as humans have done.
Yeah. Well, question from Canada, from Dolly in Ontario. Hi, Dolly. Shall we do a hello, Dolly?
Hello, Dolly.
I'm sure Dolly has a lot of that. Sorry, Dolly. That's irresistible. Dolly's asking a question about lion and leopard and their cubs, and once the cubs leave their moms, if they cross paths again, do the parents recognize them? And then, of course, if I can answer that, undoubtedly, and we've seen that with Karula and all her cubs, certainly with the leopards here at Djuma Game Reserve. But even with lion, it's a lot different, because lion are likely to leave the territory. They're likely to move away from the territory, and they depending on who it is. I mean, the females will probably stay there, but I'm talking about the lion, the male lion. When they leave mom, they're not going to be coming back to that male's territory, so that the likelihood of them crossing paths with mom again is very slim. It's not impossible, but most certainly she'll recognize them. So their blood. She's been caring for them for well on 3 years, if not a little bit more. But leopard, most certainly. Whether they're amicable or whether there's a little bit of aggression between them because of territorial issues, that depends on the day. You might find a mother and daughter one day will share a kill, and another day she'll be hissing at her daughter. We've got to keep in mind that these are not machines. They are not driven by one thing. They are emotional, caring, feeling, thinking, living beings in spotted coats. So we've seen it with Karula. I mean, there have been times when we've had Karula we've had 3 generations on one kill.
That's incredible.
Where we've had things like father and son in one tambuti tree with a nyala. feeding together after son had left mom and months later. So they,
Which, according to the textbooks, would never happen.
well, this is it. Unfortunately, the leopard don't really read the textbooks, do
Yeah.
they? But that is the one thing that I often mention on drives, is that when we're talking about animal behavior, you can't write a book about it. You can give guidelines, that, as the textbooks may say, but there's so many influencing factors when it comes to animal behavior that even the same leopard on a different day will behave differently. So you can't really even write much of a book on it. Guidelines, yes. I mean, you can give sort of basic things that one learns just by watching them. But it's constantly learning, because they are constantly changing their behavior. They're adapting to different factors in their environment, the increase in leopard populations, the change in lion populations, the change in human activity, the change in dropping fences, putting up fences. Leopards' lives are so varied that they've constantly got to adapt to those changes in their life. And I think that's the very driving force of anything in nature, is the ability to adapt, the ability to make do with what the weather and the universe is throwing at you.
Exactly.
Lesson for all of us to learn, perhaps.
Yeah.
So I hope this is going to be a first of many of our fireside chats, and
We definitely do need to bring a few chunks of meat to
think so.
barbecue, or braai is the South African
so.
term, one
Oh.
evening. So we'll have a bit of a cooking show on the side.
We could do that. try and multitask,
Yeah.
cook and chat.
I think we could handle it.
Bobby, okay, what? Hello, Bobby. I don't know where Bobby's from. Hello, Bobby, because I know a couple of Bobbies come to mind with I's and Y's. What is experience for me is or you, because I think we've got to throw those out to both of us.
Yeah.
The biggest adrenaline rush.
Do you want to go first?
Oh well, I suppose for me, undoubtedly when I was underneath an elephant, but that, you know, it's hard to beat that. It's not that it's a competition, but for me, in my own experience, I've been charged by many earlies, and I've had all sorts of close encounters in my Land Rover and things. But being underneath that elephant once in Tanzania, that was.
How did you end up underneath it? If you don't mind me asking.
She knocked me over. But that's another fireside chat story.
That you're going to need a 3-hour fireside chat for that story.
Gonna keep new viewers hanging, and old viewers know what I'm talking about.
Okay, that's interesting.
That's why,
I never
viewers have
realized.
to keep watching, because it's not a one-time TV show. This is ongoing. We're a soap opera.
Even for me now I'm waiting to hear the story, because I've yet to hear the story, folks, and obviously it's an interesting one, but we will get it out of him at some stage.
Okay, well, you can wait as long as they wait.
Yeah, well, we're both in the same boat, for those of you who don't know the story. But interesting that Marc has ended up in what sounds like some form of an arm wrestle with an elephant. I'm glad you're still here.
Me too.
After that.
And my mom and my family. And a few women.
But I think it's fair to say, Marc, as a general answer to adrenaline rushes, on foot is when you're most likely to get your highest dose of adrenaline.
Undoubtedly.
It doesn't matter what the situation is, when you're on foot, you really do fear
and
greatly when things do go wrong.
I've got to sort of interject there a little bit as well, because we've both experienced a little bit of a different on foot in other parts of Africa that make places like the Sabi Sand look a little, I wouldn't say tame, because I don't like the word tame,
No.
but it does make the Sabi Sand look, or even Kruger. Well, I can't say the whole of Kruger, because I know there's some walking trails up on the Olifants River, and there's some areas in Kruger that are phenomenal, but it kind of makes this area and all the lodges, and doing a walk from here, it's like a walk in the park.
Yeah.
Compared to parts of East Africa and walking with it's different. It's different than maybe in
areas where animals are exposed to less humans. Yeah, there's a high density of roads, which for game viewing is incredible.
That's also true.
So from a game viewing perspective, the Sabi Sands is incredible.
Yeah.
But,
and you couldn't get better than where we are right now.
But it obviously does have an impact on the animals, and they become more used to humans, whereas there are some remote locations in Africa where walking is that much more wilder because the animals are just less exposed to us, I guess.
Or if they've ever been exposed to humans, it's been on the sort of the negative side of humans, and that's either hunting or poaching, which tends to... thanks. I was just looking at that. Thanks, Scott.
Sorry, man, I'm slacking here.
No, we're just talking. And we're lucky we don't have any meat tonight, because we'd be here all night before we had enough meat. But Scott's got a question.
Okay. Just gonna have a little scan behind us here, see if there's any visitors.
Oh, there were guinea fowl going mad, but the impala went when it was getting dark before you arrived. So I think it might have been eagles again, African hawk eagles probably. Question for Scott. Your most, I don't know, I can't remember the adjective, encounter with a snake, unnerving or...
Okay, well, I've got one story that comes to mind.
Interaction, that's what it is. Interesting interaction.
Well, there's one that comes to mind, and I don't know why this one's come to mind in specific, because there's a handful. But one interesting story was when I was working in the Sabi Sands at a lodge not far from here a few years ago. There had been some lions seen in a riverbed not far from the camp, and I knew that from the morning that there was a large herd of buffalo heading straight towards where these lions were in the river. So I had planned with my guests to head out a little bit earlier than usual, I think half an hour, in order to try and get into the right position and be there waiting for some potential action to unfold. So I had got to the main deck overlooking this big sandy riverbed, and I was waiting for the guests, and I could hear the lion vocalizing and the buffalo bellowing. These lions were in all likelihood on a buffalo, and now it was letting off its distress call. So I called through to the guest room and told them to hurry up because we needed to get going even sooner than our pre-planned time. And when the one lady, I think, was running towards the vehicle, she fell over and hurt her hip. So then I went to the room to go and check on her hip and everything and just calm down the situation. And her son then came into the room, who had seen her fall, and then just gone to let the dad know that her mom had fallen down. Sorry, I'm rambling on you, but it's all part of the story.
Need that.
And the son had gone to tell the father that his mom had taken a bit of a tumble, and not the end of the world, but this is what the current plan was, that we were just waiting in the room, waiting for the medic to come and have a look. And the son came back into the room to just tell me everything was okay, and he was like, I've just seen a snake outside. So I ran outside, the mother was okay now on the bed, stable, and the son came and pointed to me where he had seen the snake. Now the entrance to these suites or rooms were lined with flat rocks on top of one another, so stacked up to create a wall, and there were lots of crevices in amongst these rocks that snakes, we knew, loved to hide in, and sometimes would use those crevices and cracks to shed their skin. And the son pointed to me which hole the snake went into, and thankfully I knew that Mozambican spinning cobras tend to like infrastructure and are often found around camps. So the fact that I knew it could be a Mozambican spinning cobra prevented me from bending down and looking into this hole. So what I did was I simply put my shoe close to the hole and waved it from side to side, and then lifted up my boot just to check, and lo and behold, the underneath of my boot was covered in venom from its spitting. So that was quite an interesting, unnerving event.
So a lesson, don't look into holes, don't.
Yeah, exactly, and a good lesson. So that was an interesting snake encounter for me. Been bitten a handful of times, thankfully all by non-venomous or slightly venomous snakes. So there's lots of snake stories, but that one is one that comes to mind that was quite interesting and unnerving to think that if I had have put my head down there, I would have had a face full of Mozambican spitting cobra venom to deal with, which thankfully isn't that bad if one does spit at you.
Sorry, I've had a venom in my eyes. It's not pleasant.
But you weren't in hospital, were you?
No.
Yeah, so
a friend of mine died from Mozambique spitting cobra.
A bite though.
No. He sucked venom in it. He had ulcers in his mouth or something.
No.
But anyways, it sounds like you also had a childhood with snakes then.
I did. Just like you said, growing up you had a menagerie.
Yeah.
My folks were put through the same admin as yours, I guess. I had aviaries full of birds and tanks full of snakes and fish and hamsters and rats and everything that I could get my hands on. So growing up with pets and little animals to look after was certainly something I loved.
So you also, I suppose, in the early guiding, you saw a snake and it was going into catch mode. It was
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
But I'm hoping you've evolved like I have.
I have.
Nowadays, it's better to watch them.
It is. Certainly.
Wonderful. Kindred spirits, no doubt. That's quite clear. Or parallel paths of education, self-education.
Yeah.
I think is what we could call it. Hopefully we'll be able to see. It's not very easy to see snakes from the vehicle because the vehicle is fairly big and it makes a noise, and one very seldom sees them. Often we might just see the tail disappearing, and there are times when you're driving around and you see a lot of snake tracks on the road. You know there's possibly storms coming because they do tend to move a lot just before. The atmospheric pressure changes before storms come in. You often get a lot of reptile movement. So I'm hoping it extends to other reptiles, not only just snakes.
No, not only snakes. We've seen quite a few good lizards around. Saw a rock monitor the other day, not far from here, but sadly only managed to give the guests a little glimpse of its tail slithering into a log. But there's also a blue-headed triagama on the torchwood at Ballinati's Rebecca's,
right, yes.
Which is a beauty to keep an eye out for. So,
okay. Yeah. Just the last question, and Alex is going to have to whisper in my ear who this was, but why do we think that walking is better than vehicle safaris? It's actually it's just a simple thing. You're immersed in it.
Yes. And
Tom, thanks Tom. Why is walking better than vehicle? Because in a vehicle, I'm making a noise on the microphone. Sorry. Yeah, walking is you're just immersed in it. To stand with even just a giraffe, or even just standing in the bush.
Yeah, you're in true wilderness, out of your comfort zone, behaving how you should behave.
Or how we did
in their place.
A million years ago.
Yeah.
14,000 years ago, before we started farming and agriculture. Mm-hmm. And we were part of nature, and I suppose over the last 10,000 years we've advanced so far that so many of us on the planet are actually wary of nature. We're so far removed from it, and being in a vehicle, you still got that umbilical cord to technology and everything else.
100%.
But when you're standing and when you're out walking in the bush, and and for me, I don't have a rifle, and often I'm without a rifle, and not often. I don't have a rifle. When I'm at home, I walk around. I've been walking around that area for 40 years. So I'm not complacent, but there's a feeling of being in one with that primal feeling of being part of nature that we've lost as modern human beings.
Yeah.
So we've got just a couple of minutes. I want to sort of maybe close off by saying from my side, I'll let Scott close off, but from me, it's been wonderful being back this week. I hope we're going to get the jigger sorted out, and soon we'll have the 2 vehicles out and we'll be exploring a little bit further. We're going to be back here next Sunday night with maybe some more tales and stories and hopefully more questions. But do keep the questions coming on the drives. Hopefully we'll be able to teach you a few things, and you'll be able to answer some of our queries, because we can only learn from you as much as you learn from us.
100%. Yes, folks, also a big thank you from me. This has been my first fireside chat or campfire chat with WildEarth, and good to be alongside Marc, and
good to have you too.
And also Brian and Jason who are helping on camera and behind the scenes, and Alex in control. Everyone in the team here is really doing a great job, and I'm proud to be a part of this team and loving every step of the adventure so far. For the next few days I'm going to be gone. I've got a wedding to attend in Cape Town, so I'm looking forward to that, a little change of scenery. So I will see you towards the end of the week. You're in very good hands with Marc and
Thanks,
Alex
mate.
and the rest of the team. So thank you from me, and we'll see you later next week.
Bye, everybody.
Hold on, Marc.
30 seconds.
Oh, 30 seconds.
No.
Well, this can give us time to stare into the flames.
Bye, everyone. See you on the drive tomorrow morning. My timing's out. That's fine. Bye. Okay, bye. See you tomorrow morning drive. Yes, no, morning drive, 6 o'clock Central African time. And I'll see you then. And hopefully we'll find something wonderful.